Welcome to the World Hong Kong Forum. Today it's a pleasure to have Mark Clifford, former director of Next Media, and also the author, Today Hong Kong, Tomorrow the World, to share with me about how to save Hong Kong. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, Ed, and congratulations on the forum.
Thank you. Now, a few days ago, we witnessed the sinking of the Jumbo. You know, like you and I both live in Hong Kong for many years. And it's kind of sad to see, it sank near the Nam Sha area. It's like a Titanic. No one expected that, right? Some people will talk about some conspiracy is that they try to claim insurance because the junk, it's, the windfall gain from claiming insurance is bigger. But I don't believe in conspiracy. But anyhow, it's a sad thing to see that sinking. Reminds me of the sinking of Hong Kong to a certain extent.
Absolutely. No, it looked pretty on the outside, but it was rotten on the inside and certainly behind, back in the kitchens. And I think that's a very good metaphor for where Hong Kong is now.
Yeah. Now, we have John Lee as the new chief executive. And is he the guy who is the mastermind beside Lok Wai Ling to put some of your former colleagues, Jimmy Lai, and also the rest of the editorial board and management under detainment?
Well, I don't know if he was a mastermind, but he was the name and the face behind the shutdown of Apple, which of course happened just over a year ago. I remember as the board, we were totally shocked when we heard and saw that Jimmy Lai had received a letter as he was in prison from this very same John Lee, informing him that his assets in the company were being frozen. Jimmy Lai owns 71% of Next Digital. It's a Hong Kong Stock Exchange listed company. And John Lee just decided he was going to freeze it. No court order, nothing, just acting on his suspicions that he had, as he said, reason to believe. Just think about those three words. He had reason to believe that Jimmy was somehow involved with some national security law violations. Now, generally, when you're in a place that believes in free enterprise and rule of law, you can't just steal somebody's property, because that's what John Lee did. I mean, he stole Jimmy Lai's property. For good measure, he tried to get 3 Singapore bank accounts as well. Wasn't able to do that. And then when the board said, okay, that's fine, Mr. Lai is in jail, he's not exercising management control anyway, we will soldier on. And that seemed to just enrage John Lee. I don't know really what his reaction was, but it emboldened or prompted him to take further actions. So he sent the board a letter telling us he was freezing the 3 key bank accounts of the company's subsidiaries, including Apple Daily newspaper. And we couldn't use other accounts to pay our staff or pay our printing suppliers or paper suppliers. And of course, we had to go out of business just over a year ago. So this is John Lee. I don't know if he's the mastermind. I don't know if I want to give him that much credit, but he's certainly the henchman. And he's the guy who's writing the letters, signing the letters, acting as judge, jury, and executioner of Apple Daily, Next Digital, and really, I would say, of freedom in Hong Kong. I mean, if you seize, okay, maybe some people don't like Jimmy Lai. They say he went too far. I'm not one of those, but I think a lot of the business community feels, oh, it's just Jimmy Lai. You know, he's a bit crazy. He's out there. But, once it happens once, it will happen again. I can't tell you who it's going to happen to or when it's going to happen, but it's not a matter of if this happens again. It's when it happens, who it happens to, whose company is seized. There is no rule of law. There's no protection in Hong Kong anymore.
Well, that makes me kind of worried because I'm in asset management. And if someone can deliberately, under the so-called national security law mandate, just to use that power to freeze someone's account, whether it's personal or business, then is there really rule of law in Hong Kong while the next government, which is now in power, seems like it's more like a police state? You have John Lee, who was formerly a policeman, and also Chris Tang, the chief of security. Now, how many people are sanctioned by the U.S. government for taking away Hong Kong's autonomy? I think 6 or 7 of them, at least, right? There was a Chris Tang, John Lee,
Carrie
Lok
Lam.
Wai Ling, yeah, Carrie Lam, yeah, yeah. These are like the people who are running the government now, right? Lok Wai Ling, of course. Some people say he is the shadow master behind it, part of the head of the liaison office, who looks very young too at his age. I thought, like he could appear in some GQ magazine cover, like a Botox person. Seriously, like I always talk about that, with half respect, of course. But it's kind of sad to see, like this. You mentioned about the Singapore freezing of Mr. Lai's account. Of course, it was not successful, right? That's personal account, I suppose, right?
It was not successful, but the fact that John Lee and the Hong Kong government, and presumably their pals from Beijing, the fact that they thought that they had the nerve to go after Singapore accounts, I mean, really tells you a lot, I think. And I think what we're seeing with Jimmy Lai is where China wants to go. And one of those things, we're going to see the playbook for the future for lots of, other, let's say, asset managers, other finance firms. And part of that is a global reach. And so it's interesting that they would try to reach into Singaporean bank accounts. I mean, I find it incredible. And I think, Ed, of course, you're in asset management, but you're also very attuned politically. And I think most of the asset management community, most of the finance community, they behave like ostriches. They want to put their head in the sand, or they're like a turtle. They want to get into their shell. They don't want to see the reality of what's going on. And look, maybe 80% of them are going to be fine. But again, it's like once it happens once, it's going to happen again. And I don't think China's really paid the consequences, paid the price. I mean, sure, a few people have been sanctioned, but there are dozens of people, especially among the prosecutors and the judges who are prosecuting these cases and hearing these cases, who also need to be held to account for what they're doing. They're destroying what's left of, much of what's left of Hong Kong, much of what makes Hong Kong so great. Independent rule of law. That means the government can lose cases and anybody who goes into court gets a fair shake. And that's not happening now.
I want to ask Mark, you see the banner underneath, right? This is like a ticket symbol with Mr. Lai and then your former colleagues, and also some of the Pandem, and also those who are in charge of the Tiananmen, like Li Chap-yan and also Hang Tong and all that. Talking about the topic is called how to save Hong Kong, but how to get these Hong Kongers who fight for democracy and freedoms, how can they be set free? That's one thing I want to ask you. And it's a lot of brainstorming in the 4 day of the Hong Kong World Forum here in Toronto and also online as well, because it doesn't seem like it is easy to get amnesty. It's not easy to see, like the whole world, have they spoken up strong enough to defend what's going on?
Yeah, well, I think, we're dealing with a very difficult adversary. Look at the Olympics. Usually before you have an Olympics, even the worst governments will release a few political prisoners, will make a couple of, kind of smooth noises about reform. Did China do anything at all in February for the Winter Olympics? Not a thing. The most noteworthy event was the meeting between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, where these two leaders said that their friendship had no limits, and we think that Xi Jinping green-lighted the Ukraine invasion. So not only was there not any move to pretend at reform or try to mollify critics, but in fact it was doubling down with Putin. So I think that means that we have to think about our tactics. I mean, as far as I know, nobody's negotiating for the release of these prisoners. I mean, I think that's something Britain should be doing a lot more of, because some of these people are British nationals. And of course, Britain has a historic responsibility toward Hong Kong. But although I think there's a lot of support for the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong in Britain, the government itself, the Boris Johnson government, just isn't really doing anything as far as we know. So I think what we have to do is a kind of multi-pronged strategy. First of all, we have to keep the pressure on China. We have to keep the spotlight on China. We have to keep reminding the world what they are doing to needlessly destroy a free and prosperous city. I mean, again, this is completely unnecessary. The people that are in jail are in any normal, open, democratic society would be celebrated. People would be applauding them for their civic involvement, for running for the city council, for LegCo, for wanting to be the mayor or have an opposition candidate for the mayor, for the chief executive. But it's this very success of the pandems that landed them in jail. Beijing couldn't take even a moderate, nonviolent opposition, and so it drove things to quite a point in 2019. But so we're dealing with thugs. We're dealing with a mafia. We're dealing with a criminal enterprise here that's masquerading as a government. And we have to realize they will do anything to stay in power. We saw the hundreds of people, maybe more, who were killed in Tiananmen in 1989. This is still that same government. So we try to embarrass them. We try to ridicule them. We try to mock them. Above all, we keep Hong Kong in the spotlight. That's hard. And at the same time, we need to put pressure on democratic governments in Asia, in Europe, in North America, in Latin America, in Africa, everywhere we can, to keep fighting back against the Chinese, to not let them get away with their lies and their deceptions in the United Nations and on the world stage. Not easy, but look, I saw the Berlin Wall go up. I lived in Berlin. I saw the Berlin Wall, and then I saw the Berlin Wall go down. And we will have that moment in China as well.
Mark, I saw you as a former journalist of South China Morning Post, and at an older age, you become an activist. Seems like running an organization. Can you tell us what's the name of your organization?
Sure. It's the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong, and we're focused on these issues I've talked about. We're above all focused on political prisoners, and we're focused on trying to keep the spotlight on Hong Kong and not to let the world forget.
Of course, it is important. And some people would say that the so-called two systems, the second half is already gone. But to have continuity, it's a continuing outside of Hong Kong. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, we've had hundreds of thousands of people, I guess, anyway, over 100,000 people who've emigrated since 2019. And, that's really sad for Hong Kong. But with the possibilities of technology, we're able certainly to get some information into Hong Kong, but also to keep in touch with each other, to have a global alliance, I think. And I was very interested on June 4th this year, of course, the 33rd anniversary of the Tiananmen killings, to see, big worldwide celebrations. So it used to be that Tiananmen, the killings, were commemorated above all in Victoria Park in Hong Kong. And in 2019, I was there with well over 150,000 other people. And this was the biggest commemorative gathering in the world around Tiananmen. And of course, it was the only place in China. Okay, Victoria Park doesn't exist anymore in terms of commemoration. So we had and we'll have again a virtual Victoria Park. And so we've seen commemorations on a scale we've never seen before globally. And it wasn't just about commemorating June 4th and the people who died in Tiananmen and really throughout China. It was to commemorate all victims of the Chinese Communist Party, those who perished, those who are still with us in jail or otherwise, having a difficult time. And so it's about Uyghurs, it's about Tibetans, it's about Hong Kongers, of course, it's about Han Chinese. And so I think that the diaspora and the technology give us new possibilities to organize against the CCP and the party state.
Now, last but not least, before we leave today's forum, I just read recently one of the new ministers in the new Hong Kong cabinet. He comes from mainland China. He speaks Mandarin, and he is in charge of technology and all that. They will spend 140 billion Hong Kong on things like AI prisons, facial recognition, and all that. 140 billion Hong Kong. That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So Do you want to talk about technology or about the minister or?
Sure, the minister. He
Yeah,
is from mainland China that speaks Mandarin. Only
yeah,
person in Letchworth that speaks Mandarin.
yeah, yeah. Well, I thought he claims to understand Cantonese, but he
Yeah,
prefers to speak Mandarin. Well, I'm sure most of the other ministers and colleagues in government are all going to be speaking Mandarin pretty
soon.
soon,
Yeah.
as will all of our the students in Hong Kong. So at least they'll have good Mandarin. I hope they can keep their Cantonese alive. But I think this is a very serious issue. Um, China is excelling in the surveillance state and in the technology that's used to surveil people. And you see the way that COVID is being used for political purposes, political repression, especially control, social tracking in Hong Kong and, of course, in the mainland. This is not going away. And it turns out now when somebody, let's say, has a dispute with the property company they bought an apartment from and they want to organize a demonstration, bam, all of a sudden red on their phone, they can't go out, and it's showing up as if they've been exposed to COVID, but it's a means of social controls. This is never going away, and I think it's sad. It's a sad use of money. It's a sad use of resources, and it's a sad use of the incredible intelligence of so many great scientists and researchers and others in China. Xi Jinping wants China to be a technological leader, and it will be in the surveillance state. I'm not sure it's going to be in the kinds of things that will advance humanity. And I think that's partly because the flow of information is being increasingly cut off, and you need free flow of information. You need to be able to disagree. You need to be wrong. You need to make mistakes. That's how we advance as human beings. You don't need to lock people up in jail who disagree with you. And that, I think, China's just taken a fundamentally wrong turn. We play the long game. As I said, it's an ultra marathon. Things don't change, don't change, don't change, and then they change very, very quickly. I don't know when that's going to be, but I know that day is coming.
And thank you so much, Mark, for appearing at the World Hong Kong Forum. And we have to keep fighting, and we cannot forget those who are detained. This banner list, actually, it's long. It's more than 1,000 people. These are the more recognizable names that most of us can know.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ed. And I wish the World Hong Kong Forum every success, and keep up the fight, keep up the good work. And let's just keep doing our bit for Hong Kong.
Thank you, Mark.